Hey, I'm Matt Holliday, and we are in the Heirloom Surfboard shop here again in Cocoa, Florida. I'm with Fiberglass, Florida today. We're going to be talking about cloth inlays. Okay, so the first question you may be asking yourself is, what is a cloth inlay on a surfboard? Well, a cloth inlay is kind of just what it sounds like. It's a piece of cloth with a certain design. Like today, we're going to be using this cloth right here, and it gets laminated onto the surfboard before the surfboard is glassed. Second question you may have is, why do I need to use a cloth inlay, or why would I use a cloth inlay? Well, number one, cloth inlay is in the tradition of old school surfboards, which I build, so that's a good thing for me in heirloom surfboards. Secondly, there's very few things that you can get such a consistent, beautiful design as this for the money. This piece of cloth right here was around $40. Another reason is this cloth right here, 30 years from now, underneath the glass on this surfboard will look just as good. It won't fade like airbrush fades. So there's a couple of reasons. Where you get this stuff, oddly enough, is you can go to any kind of old lady quilting shop. I got this at a quilting shop, and I walk in there and there's thousands of prints. I'll show you an example of some other prints that I've gotten throughout the years, and you can just kind of get an idea of the cool stuff that you could find at these stores. Here's another one, kind of island style. So now that you guys know what a cloth inlay is, we're going to start discussing how we install one on a surfboard. On this particular board, it's going to get a cloth inlay on the bottom only, and the rest of the board is going to be clear, because that's how I want to do this board. So as always in my shop, the very most important thing that we do around here is keep the board clean. Now, I happen to know that this board was shaped last night, blown off in the shaping room, and moved directly to this rack. So I know this board's clean. But even with that knowledge, I'm still going to go ahead and give it a really quick blow. Now that we have a perfectly clean surfboard, we have to choose how big we want the laps. So for this concept, I'll try to keep it short. What I'm doing is the inlay is going to be inside the rails. So what I'm asking you to do is you need to choose how large you want the white portion of the rail to be. So if I choose about 1.5 inches, I'll tape right to where my pencil line is right now. But for this surfboard, we're going to go about 2.25, which is right there. What I'm trying to get at here is that everything inside of the 2.25 mark is going to be the inlay, and everything outside of the 2.25 mark is going to be a clear white rail. On this particular board, I want 2.25, 100%, 360 degrees all the way around this board. So that's why I make these tiny little marks, because I don't want to stray from 2.25. Since I'm the only one who touches this surfboard, I know that this surfboard is getting pin lined. A pin line is going to go over the cut line where I make my razor cut at the completion of the cloth inlay. A really important line right here. So one thing to keep in mind here is that we are taping on the outside of my mark. As you got to remember, everything on the inside of my marks is going to get the cloth inlay. For the nose, this green tape that I use does not bend well enough to make the turn around this particular nose. Maybe if it was wider, but not this nose. So I moved to a 3/4 inch tape at the nose. And that's going to make the bend quite nicely. This area at the nose is an area where a lot of eyeballs are going to be. So you really want to take an extra minute and make sure that your two lines that are peeling off of each other are as symmetrical as possible. Because when you come into pin line, if you're coming in a little too heavy on the left side or a little too narrow and you're coming in wide on the right side, everyone's going to see it. It's going to be really plain to see after you get done pin lining. So go ahead and take an extra minute at the nose to make sure that you're symmetrical. Okay, so now that the board's taped off, I dress up my tail, which just means removing all the excess tape. Okay, so now that the board is taped off, at least my lap line is taped off, I'm going to go ahead and begin masking the rails of the board because resin is going to be flowing down the rails of this board, and we don't want resin to make it to the deck side of the board. Now that I have the rails all taped off, I'm going to press the tape down to get a very good seal, a very good bond to the surfboard. I don't want any resin seeping underneath this tape. The resin needs to stay generally right inside this white area, including the wooden stringer too. So here I'm just bending the tape up. This will ensure that when the resin drips off the tape, that it doesn't continue on and get onto the deck of the board. I want all the resin to drop onto the floor. Okay, so now comes the fun part. We have our cloth. And I'm just gonna gently roll it over the board. By the way, this cloth comes in, I can't remember what the width is, but it's wide enough that you could do 2 surfboards with it. So I actually have a personal surfboard that I built myself that has this same cloth on it. These patterns are symmetrical. Every one of them is the same. It's like you could fold them in half and they would be exactly the same. As you can see, we have a gorgeous T-band stringer with balsa and redwood. So what we want to do is, which is going to be difficult, but if you can see at the bottom of each design, there's a circle, and at the top of each design, there's a flower. And if you draw a straight line, you can go straight down the center of the circle and the flower from nose to tail. So what we're going to attempt to do today is have one design that we follow all the way down the stringer, so it doesn't look like our pattern is drifting off towards the left or towards the right. So once again, minor details, and it's going to make a huge impact in the end if we can nail this. Okay, so I have hopefully what looks like really centered my cloth. Take some time with that, by the way, too. Off camera, I was working at that for about 5 minutes to get it right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to strategically choose a couple locations right next to the stringer to put some pins. As you can imagine, the pins are to hold the cloth in place. And I think it's important to say that you don't have to do this with every cloth inlay. There's some cloth inlays that don't have any symmetry to them at all, and they don't need this much detail, but this particular one does. All right, so now we're ready to install or glass on the cloth inlay. And what we'll start by doing is folding half of the cloth over on top of itself. Just want to take as much care as humanly possible so that we don't have any issues when it comes time to fold this cloth back over. So to glass my inlay on, I use the same stuff that I use to laminate. It's called Silmar 249A, and I get it from Fiberglass, Florida. Okay, so I got my hardener here. I have my Silmar, and I'm ready to shoot this board. Just have to decide what I'm going to shoot it at. It's a little warm in this room right now, so I think I'll shoot it at about 10. Now, as all of my videos, I'll remind everybody out there when they're stirring their catalyst in to make sure that they stir it thoroughly. And the rule is, if you think you're done stirring, go ahead and stir some more. And this is how the cloth inlay goes. Go ahead and apply your resin. You're just going to want to go ahead and spread it out. If the board seems a little wet to you, maybe a little too much resin, it's not a problem at all. We're going to use the squeegee in a little bit to go ahead and remove some of that excess. One thing you don't want is you don't want it dry. So I start in the middle, and then I move to my right side, and then I move to my left side. Once again, take your time. Do not rush this. If you think you need to go ahead and catalyze the resin a little slower, so you're going to have extra time to work on this step, then go ahead and do that. Okay, we're looking really good right now. Now we're going to move on to the other side. Right now I'm going to remove my 3 pins because my cloth right now is anchored by the resin. So I no longer need my pins to hold the cloth in place. So once again, starting in the middle, then moving to my right and left, I will apply the resin to this side of the board, all the way to the stringer, and all the way out to the tape. Okay, taking our time, we're going to do the center, over to the right, and over to the left. I cannot stress enough, do not rush this. You will end up boogering your inlay up, and you don't want to put this much work into a board just to rush it. At this point right now, I am taking extreme care to make sure that every single one of my patterns is going directly down the stringer, and it's looking pretty good right now. So I'm going to go ahead and work from the center and pull outwards. Okay, what am I doing here? I'm kind of pulling the cloth inlay tight and making sure that it doesn't bunch up on itself.
Here we go again, work from the center. This is getting the cloth inlay to lay down flat. And it's also removing air. Any air that I have left underneath the cloth inlay is being removed right now by this squeegee work. Okay, this side of the stringer. Start in the center and pull towards the rail. Start in the center, pull towards the rail. Start in the center, pull towards the rail. And we will do our final quarter, which is just to my left. Start in the center, pull towards the rail, removing all air, removing all excess resin, and also making the cloth nice and flat. Now, finally, I'll do my last pour. But before I do that, I'm just going to look down the stringer and see that everything is looking centered. Yeah, everything looks really good. So let's do our final squeegee work here. I'm not applying a lot of pressure here. If you apply too much pressure to the cloth, it will bunch up on you and you'll have a real problem on your hands. So just a moderate pressure, not too light and not too heavy. See, you may be able to see this. I have a little bunch up right there, but no worries, we can get it right out. Some air. When you're finished with your final squeegee work, you want to have the flattest surface humanly possible. Because I want you guys at home to think about something. When I get finished with this board, this surface right here is going to be covered in hot coat and gloss, and it's going to be polished. And it's actually going to look almost as good as a mirror reflection. So if you have any lumps or bumps in this initial step, it's not going to go well for the rest of the build. So this is where we get the lumps and the bumps out, people. You do want your resin to go off right when you finish. You don't want to be waiting on it for hours. So what I've noticed is just one of the patterns is just slightly off to the right. So I'm just gonna pull it over to the left, centering it in the middle of the stringer. And that's a lot better right there. It may not be perfect, but that's better right there.
All right, so we're back in the room after the resin has kicked. And what I've done so far is right up here in the nose, as you could see, I used this tape right here. It's called 3M 2727. And it bends really good at the nose, but it's also extremely hard to see underneath this inlay. So I kind of took my pins and I just kind of mapped out where the tape line was, and it helped me get through that curve. So don't be afraid to use, implement some different ideas when trying to find your line, because remember, this line has to be super straight, super nice, so you can lay a good pin line over it that won't be wonky and wavy. So before you ever lay a blade into this board to cut your cloth inlay, you really want to make sure you grab a brand new blade. You will thank yourself later on when you're making these cuts and the blade is going through the inlay like a hot knife through butter. So what I do is I take a single edge blade and I try not to bury it too far into the foam, but you are going to have to get into the foam a little bit. And I'm just going to go ahead and follow my tape line. And as you can see, I'm using my pinky to anchor myself. Since the resin's kicked, it's not really too much of a problem to drag my pinky down the inlay. Maintain your positioning right on the edge of the green line. Another funny thing that I do is, I learned this from a laminator way back in the day, is I always keep my other hand in my pocket. It may be a mental thing, but it keeps me from trying to get in there with two hands. It's just kind of a strange thing that I picked up, and it really helps me just stay focused on the line that I'm working on. And so far, I haven't strayed from the line at all. Take your eyes, take your concentration off of this line, even for a second. You will come off the line and you'll end up with a little inconsistency in your lap. So for 5 minutes, just give it your best effort, your best concentration. You'll thank yourself later when it comes time to pin line. As I come towards the end, I'll slow down. I can see that I'm coming towards the corner, and that's where I meet my perpendicular piece of tape. And then I'll find my other corner on this side, and I'll work my way towards myself. Now I'm going to work from tail to nose. Once again, using my pinky to anchor myself. And all I'm doing is following my tape line. Five minutes, that's all this takes, is 5 minutes. So give it your best. I've made my cut all the way around the perimeter of the board, and now I just find an area that I want to tackle first. So as you can see, I'm just choosing an area that I want to begin removing the excess. And this is what it looks like when you start removing. And what I want you to do here is, when you're pulling the excess cloth away from the surfboard, go slow. Because if you missed a thread somewhere along the way, you're going to be pulling and you're going to probably yank a big thread out into the cloth inlay, basically ruining your whole job. So let's just go ahead and have your blade with you. Just in case you see a thread, you can cut it on the fly. Slow movements. Slow movements. Things are coming out good so far, but as I say to all my customers, we never celebrate until the board is complete. So we're just going to continue moving slowly, especially at the nose. Remember, all eyes are on the nose when the board is complete. So it doesn't look like there's any threads there, so I'm going to continue on. Okay, do not rush this. Once again, as we reach the tail, I want you to slow down even more and make sure that you're not going to pull any threads. Oh, and here we go, we've got a thread. This is a good learning point right here. Can the camera catch this thread right here? Since I have my blade with me, I cut it on the fly and we can move on with our lives. If I was yanking it too hard, we would have a real issue right now. So that was a great little learning point right there. And I've got another thread right here. Okay. Hopefully that's the last one that we'll see. Yes, that is the last one. Cool. All right guys, thanks so much for joining me in the shop today. Once again, I'm Matt Holliday and this is the Heirloom Surfboard Shop. You can follow this build along with all my other builds on Instagram. Just type in Heirloom Surfboards. I want to thank Fiberglass Florida for all the great materials, for joining me today, and for all the support that they give me. Until next time, peace.